for every success story you hear, there's hundreds of ones that don't work out. And the funny thing is, like, everybody looks at the end result and it thinks like, oh, okay, well, it's an overnight success story. That's not true at all. In fact, all of them had to go through heartache and failure and issues to get to the point they're at. In fact, I know we'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm reading the Elon Musk book right now. And I just find it amazing. The guy's, the most successful entrepreneur ever in terms of wealth. Yet you read about how close things were to completely tipping over and both companies, SpaceX and Tesla, going bankrupt, and all the things he had to do and all the personal heartache and things he had to go through to make these businesses last.
Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
Oz Rashid, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Thanks, Keith. Really appreciate you having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, and I was grateful to be on your podcast, which was a lot of fun also. So I'm getting revenge on you for all the grilling you gave me on your podcast.
We got to do the home and home. You came on to mine, so I got to come on to yours.
That's right.
So I'm glad to be here.
That's right, buddy. So, really we start out usually the same way, because with entrepreneurs, there's usually a story because it takes a tremendous amount of drive, motivation, and grit to start a company and build it. And it's hard. So, and I usually, in talking with people, find out there's some story in their past and growing up and maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but just would like to start there and know about where you grew up and your family and those type of things.
Yeah. I don't think I was somebody that knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I got older. Although when I look back, when I was growing up, I was always, hustling in terms of like, I was the kid that would go to Costco and I would buy blow pops and I would go sell those for $0.25 at school. I would do the same with candy bars, Pogs, things like that. I mean, this is kind of aging me there, but I was always looking at, trying to find an opportunity to provide value to the people around me. And so I kind of naturally was doing a lot of those things. But I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I got older. And I'll get into that in a minute. But if I look back at the way I grew up, my background is really unique. So my mom and dad, I come from a mixed background. So my mom is Indian and very stereotypical conservative Indian, very much like don't date, don't drink, honor your name, honor your family, humongous family. So that was one side of my life. And then my father was German. Born in Germany, very small family, and he had a very different outlook on life. He was much more liberal on things. He had an earring in his ear. He drove a yellow Jeep. He, was giving me my first beer when I was 12 years old. So I don't know how these two people got together, let alone got married and had a child. But I guess that's college. I guess sometimes that's not how it works. Obviously, they didn't stay together very long. But I look at that background and that upbringing being really, really important to who I am. I think I learned a lot about being able to adapt to different communities. I think I'd like to think I took the best of both worlds. From my mom's side, I have a lot of that kind of morality, that ethical code, that discipline that came with that. But my dad was always somebody that was telling me to go out and make friends and to put myself out there and, sometimes to be the life of the party. And so I think I've managed to marry those two things, and they inform a lot of who I am. And I think have made a lot of sense around who the entrepreneur I am is. I've always taken pride in being very comfortable in a room of CEOs and being comfortable in a room of crackheads. And I know that sounds crazy, but what I mean by that is I don't have to adapt who I am in both of those places. I'm not going to change who I am, but I think I can connect on both of those levels, ask questions, build connections at those different levels and everything in between. And so that's been really important to me because a lot of times I'm going to be speaking with the highest level executives in a business, and I have to be able to relate to them. But also I can be working with, somebody that we hired that was just fresh out of college.
Hopefully not crackheads.
Yeah, hopefully not crackheads. We've managed to move those out of the life. But no, I've been maybe somebody who's fresh out of college who has a very different outlook on things and be able to connect with them. And so that ability to connect on all sides of different environments, different expectations and different upbringings has been, I think, a big reason for my success as an entrepreneur.
Cool. And where exactly did you grow up?
So I grew up in Southern California. I was there the first 11 years of my life. And then I mentioned earlier, my parents had gotten separated when I was pretty young. And so my mom moved to Arizona. And so then I moved to Arizona then. And I really look at Arizona as my home. I cheer for all Arizona teams. I'm a big Phoenix Suns fan, big Cardinals fan, big Diamondbacks fan. Went to the University of Arizona. A lot of my formative life was spent there. So I actually still have a lot of family there and I consider that home. And then I moved to Florida in 2005. And so I've been here for, I guess 18 years, right?
Yeah.
Longer than I've been in either California or Arizona. I still, in my heart, consider myself a West Coast guy, but I love Florida. I've obviously started my business here. I met my wife here. I built my family here. And so Florida means a lot to me, and this community means a lot to me.
That's great. So you attended school in Arizona, University of Arizona.
Yep.
And from there, what were you majoring in? What kind of studies?
Yeah, great question. So, a lot of times, what our parents want us to be is a lot of times, especially when you're younger and you don't really know anything about the professional world, is kind of what you start to pursue. And so my dad always wanted me to be a lawyer. I think that was his dream. And so he didn't accomplish that. And so he, I think, wanted his son to do that or live vicariously through me. So it's funny because when I was a kid, he used to have me read through these big, thick law books. And he would have me, pay me $5 if I could answer questions at the end about what a tort was or what type of interference might be or what it might be, all these different legalities. And I was like 11, 12 years old, just trying to get $5. And so I kind of felt like being a lawyer was what I was always destined to be. And so I went to school. I ended up being a communications and business management major minor at University of Arizona. But I was always planning on going to law school. And that's really what my thought process was. And really why, not necessarily did I want to be a trial lawyer, but I just thought that by going to law school, I was giving myself a lot of options. There's one time I wanted to be a sports agent. And so I thought having a law degree would be important there. Being a politician, right? Having a law degree, I thought could be imperative there. And so really what I wanted to do was give myself some optionality and go to law school. And so that's what I did. I ended up graduating and I started applying for law school. And I took a semester off because I'd just been through school and wanted to give myself a little bit of time, wanted to save up some money, and ended up applying to a bunch of different law schools. My dad wanted me to go to UCLA, so I had applied there. I actually did really well on my LSATs. And in this process is actually where my career took a turn. I was talking to a mentor of mine who worked out here in Florida. And he was a director in technology at a Fortune 500 company out here. And what he mentioned to me was, law school is really expensive. He's like, I think it's awesome that you want to do that, but have you thought about how you're going to pay those bills? Right. And I'm like, not really. He said, the company I work at has a tuition reimbursement program. Maybe you could come get involved here and maybe start a corporate career and then go to law school and have it be paid for. And that made a lot of sense to me at the time. I said, you know what? I hadn't been really thinking about it from that perspective. So I kind of put the applications on hold and came and interviewed for a role out here and then got the job. And then as many times happens, your plans, get tossed to the side once you get involved with something like that. And so I never actually went to law school. I actually just started pursuing my corporate career from that point forward.
And that was and you moved to Florida then?
Yeah, so that's when I moved to Florida. So it was with ADT Security.
Yep.
And I came and I worked in technology and I had zero knowledge about technology at the time. This was before technology was really disrupting everything. It was a very formative time. It was about 2005. And so I interviewed for a role in technology and a lot of them were looking at me like, well, why do you want to work here? You want to take on an analyst level role? And what I told them was, hey, look, I'm really just trying to learn. I want to get involved in a big environment, see where I can make an impact. And you can make me the janitor if you want. What I'll do is within 6 months, I'll provide so much value as the janitor that you'll have no choice but to move me into something more high impact. And they seemed to like that answer. And they said, all right, we like your gumption and your grit. And so I got the job and ultimately got started from there and kind of worked my way up the ladder from there.
That's cool. That's good advice to, it's an entrepreneurial podcast, but we have a lot of younger listeners too. And so I think a lot of college students, they graduate, they're not sure, like my own kids, they graduate, they're not sure what they want to do. And that's really good advice. I've talked my kids out of going to law school. I don't encourage them to go because I really think exactly as you were saying that, it's better to go out there, do something and experience the world first. And then if you want to go to law school, because it's expensive and it's a lot of time too, not just, time, energy, a lot of work.
Yeah. I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here. I mean, I think one of the things that we do as a society here in the US that is really diminishing for a lot of people in that very youthful age of 17, 18, 19, 20 is we don't do a very good job of, like, we force people or students to pick majors, right? And start to build their career at 18 years old. And then a lot of times, like, they just get caught in this cycle of like, well, this is, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, right? And I'd be a lawyer right now if I just was adamant about that, even though I had zero experience in that space. And so I think a lot of times we do a disservice when kids get into school, number one, figuring out what they want to do. And then once they get out of school, like, kind of going down this path, and then you get pot committed. Like, if you've been doing law or you've paid for law school, guess what? You're probably going to have to be a lawyer at that point, even though you might realize once you start doing it, oh man, I really don't enjoy this, or this really isn't for me. So I think it's a big disservice. And that's why I'm a big believer in apprenticeship, or learning the job that you want to do, not just academically and conceptually, but what does it mean in the day to day? And that's why I think internships can be super important. I think that companies have a responsibility to young, early in career talent that they bring in to help them understand the work that they're doing. And also maybe allow them the ability to change their mind over time, right? Like, a lot of what we do at MSH is we bring people into our company who are early in career, and they're kind of figuring out what they want to do, but we don't hold them to that over the first, year or two. It's like, if they start to decide, I have a passion about marketing, and I've been seeing that marketing team work over there, I want to get involved with that. We're excited about that. We'll tell them, hey, we'll give you some, we'll get you some exposure over there. We'll get you some training and development over there. And if that's what you're passionate about and you want to learn about, then you can start to pursue that angle. And I just think that's something that all companies should think about. Not only that, I also think, like, becoming an adult is such a big transition, right? I remember when I started at ADT, it was a very sink or swim. I had to kind of learn my way there, but also I was trying to figure out, how do I pay taxes? What do I do with a credit card? What do I do? Like, there's all these different things that, like, as you become an adult and you're on your own, you've got to figure out. And there's very little information out there on how to do that properly and effectively. Maybe now it's a little bit different because of the internet and things like that. But when I was in 2004, 2005, I had very little knowledge, and I was just dying to learn about, how do I become an adult? How do I pursue this path? So I do think that it's a responsibility of organizations and schools to better set up our youth for success. But I guess the advice I would give to anybody who's still trying to figure out what they want to do is keep an open mind and expose yourself to a bunch of different things. Like me taking that opportunity, like, I could have been very much like, no, I'm going to law school. That's what I want to do, and been very stubborn about that. And who knows where I'd be today. But I was open-minded to the idea that, well, let me learn about something new. Let me expose myself to something new. And I'm still have that law school track. If I want it, they're going to pay for it. But what ended up happening is I realized that's actually not what I want to do. I figured out what I wanted to do, and that's led me to where I am today.
Good advice. Very good advice. I'm going to make sure my son listens to this podcast.
Awesome.
So you're working at ADT, you're successful, you're living in Miami now, or South Florida?
Yeah, I was up in Boca Raton. Yep.
Boca. So what happens to make you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Great question. So one thing I'll just say before we get into that, I know there's two different ways or thought processes around becoming an entrepreneur. And a lot of times I'll look back now and see that a lot of the things that are important to me have a real entrepreneurial lean, but that would be me looking at the end result and working backward and saying this was always designed. They say as an entrepreneur, right, you're either a mercenary or a missionary, right? And I am definitely a missionary. And really what I think is important about being an entrepreneur, and I was actually giving this advice to my nephew the other day, was you can decide you want to be an entrepreneur and then figure out what problem you want to solve. And it sounds like there's plenty of entrepreneurs who have done that and had great success. I personally, that's not how it could have ever worked for me. I don't understand that. For me, I encountered a problem and I desperately felt like this needs to be solved and somebody needs to figure this out and do that. And that's how I became an entrepreneur. So for me, I was working at ADT and I was doing pretty well. I'd been promoted 3 times in 4 years. And I moved into a role where I was working in the quality assurance and technology department. And I was a project manager. And so my job was to manage kind of the environments, and there's all these different projects going on. And it was a pretty heady job for a 24-year-old at the time. And I remember when I got promoted, my boss came to me pretty quickly after that, my new boss, and said, Oz, you gotta, congratulations. I need you to hire 3 people for this super critical project. It's visible all the way up to the CEO of the company. We need to get it done in 3 weeks. And then kind of left me be. And that's what I meant by that sink or swim. And I remember at the time thinking my head was spinning. I was like, I don't know anything about recruiting. I didn't get recruited into this company. I'd never worked with a recruiting company. And so I got my bearings about me and I went and started asking around and saying, what do I do? And fortunately, I had some coworkers who said, hey, here you go. There's some approved vendors that we work with to help you kind of fill these contract needs on your team. But they were like, you're not going to have a very enjoyable experience. We want to warn you. And I was like, okay, well, I'll keep an open mind. So I called the companies that they had mentioned, and I started bringing people in. And they came in and they were parading in with their donuts and their bagels and big smiles and being my best friend. And that was great. And we spent, a good amount of time talking about the positions and talking about life and all these different things. And as they left, all of them were like, Oz, don't worry. We got you. We're going to get these positions filled. We understand what you're looking for. We understand the time sensitivity of it. And I'd spent a good amount of time saying, this is exactly what I'm looking for, because I knew it was really key to get the right people. And quite frankly, this is the first time I'm hiring. So for me, it was a really big deal that I got it right. I wanted to prove that, this young buck was ready to do this, right? And so a week goes by and crickets. I don't hear anything. And so I'm getting a little bit concerned. And so I sent a couple pointed emails and they write me back, oh yeah, we got you. And they send a bunch of resumes. And so I start going through the resumes and immediately I'm like, uh-oh, I got a big problem here. Like, they didn't listen to what I said at all. In fact, the people they're sending me don't seem to be fits at all what I'm looking for. So I was like kind of caught behind the 8-ball, and I was like, all right, well, I got to move on this. So I said, all right, let me talk to these two people right here that seemed kind of like fits. And then wouldn't you know it, both people didn't show up for the interview. And so at this point I was freaking out, and I was like, well, this is no good. Like, I'm working with supposedly the experts in this space. We're supposed to be helping me in this. And I was realizing right then that I'd probably, tied my horse to the wrong group, so to speak. Probably got that analogy wrong, but I think you know what I mean. And so I was scrambling, and so started to just ask some friends and referrals, and eventually I actually ended up getting the 3 roles filled just through friends who had connections of people that ended up working out. So ended up getting it done in the right timeline, but it never really left my mind how bad that experience was. And here's why. It was super commoditized. It was super transactional. They didn't listen to me. And I think the worst part is, it didn't really seem like they cared about the outcome that was so important to me. To them, it just seemed like they were throwing stuff up against the wall and hoping it stuck. And it didn't make any sense to me, because I was thinking about it and I thought, well, as a hiring manager, the type of talent that I bring into my organization, right? And under my team, that's a big reason if not, I get promoted, right? Mm-hmm. Or if I'm seen as successful in my role. So that's a big deal, okay? And then I thought about it from the company's perspective, right? ADT's, ability to be number 1 or number 10 in their industry is tied to the people they bring into the organization. And then I thought about it from the candidate perspective. And when you think about, we've all met people or have been people that have been laid off or in a toxic work environment. And when that happens, that next job or that opportunity that hopefully gets you out of that is really important. And yet I felt like it was being put in the hands of, I'm just going to be honest, people that seemed like used car salespeople, people that didn't have a lot of expertise in this space, people that didn't offer a lot outside of just finding resumes and sending them over. And to me, that didn't make a lot of sense, just because I thought this was so important. And so and the more research I did, the more kind of chaotic I saw the industry overall was. Internal talent acquisition had some things that could be better for sure. External agencies did. It just didn't seem like there was a lot of opportunity in the space. And so I put that in the back of my head, just kind of, that's interesting, but didn't put too much thought into it until I started realizing, well, I don't want to be a CIO. I don't want to be a chief information officer, which is what my kind of career path was looking like at that point. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do? I want to be doing something more sales and marketing focused. And so I started interviewing for other jobs outside of technology. I was looking at commercial sales in real estate. I was looking at commercial banking. ADT got wind that I was looking for new opportunities, and they actually were offering me opportunities on the national sales side. So I had all these different opportunities lined up. And I remember a mentor at the time said to me, hey, listen, you should meet with this guy. He's in the executive search space. He's making like $9,000 a paycheck. He's even younger than you, and you should probably talk to him. He's doing some good stuff. And I was like, I don't know, man. That's not really I learned about that area. It seems like there's a lot of stigma there. It's not really for me. He's like, just take the meeting and see what that you said. So I remember I went to this meeting and I didn't take it seriously at all. In fact, I remember it was a dinner meeting, And I actually jogged there, and I had my headphones on and a t-shirt and basketball shorts. Like, I could not have taken this meeting any less seriously, which was a mistake, because as soon as I got there, me and this guy really connected. And we started talking about, why the industry was where it was and what could be better. But, we really started talking about where the industry was going. And as I got home that night, I really started to think about it myself. Where is this going? And do I want to be a part of it? And can I be transformative in this space? And the answer was yes. And so that got me really excited. And so what ended up happening is I ended up working with this guy at a small boutique firm. He ended up doing the sales aspect. I was doing the recruiting aspect. We had a lot of success. And ultimately what we realized was the owner of the company we had worked at didn't have the same long-term vision that we did. And so that's when we were like, and we had customers that were telling us, you guys should go open up your own thing. Like, you guys are really good at this and you're doing a great job and you should be doing this on your own. And that is how I became an entrepreneur. It wasn't something by design. I got into a space where I noticed there was a problem and I thought I could make an impact. It took a little bit, but I ended up having some success. And then I realized, okay, well, I want to do this my way or our way. And that's when we opened up MSH in 2011, January 1st.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is great. Yeah. So you really, wasn't like you were sitting there saying, I want to start my own business, but that opportunity just hit you right upside the head and said, hey, this is what you should do.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot of people who know they want to own their own company and want to be an entrepreneur and, move to Silicon Valley to do those types of things. That wasn't my story. My story, again, was just kind of seeing a problem, starting to get involved and learn more about it. And then as I realized there's a big opportunity here, it made sense to do it our way or my way. And that's why opening the company and getting to where we're at has been such a really amazing story and really life-changing for me. And now I look back and say, I can't imagine doing anything different. Being an entrepreneur is so in my blood. And so much about, some of the things I realized where I would have trouble with authority in school, or I would be very stubborn on a certain thing, or I would want to innovate and people would be like, nah, just kind of stay in this line. I now look back and realize being an entrepreneur was always in my blood. But I didn't realize it until I kind of got hit over the head, like you said.
Oh, that's great. And so as you started off, you had partners, but today you are the CEO and you're the 100% owner.
Yeah, close to 100%, a large majority owner. And so,
right.
What I will say is both the partners that I started the company with, they did a lot to provide value for the company in terms of getting us to where we were at the time when they left in 2017 and 2018, respectively. Being a partner is like being married, right? So there's ups and downs, and there's things that is different than if you're a sole proprietor. You have to work within, especially when you're equal partners, you have to work within the constraints of that, and that was not always easy. I'll be honest with you. And for different partners for different reasons. And so it ended up working out the way it did through a lot of trial and tribulation. But I also want to say that, like, without those other partners, like, the company is, what certainly wouldn't have been where it was in 2017 and 2018. And there's a lot of things I learned from that time that have made me a better leader, somebody better to work for and work with in that time that they contributed mightily to.
That's great. And so as you expanded the business, tell us about your geographic reach and what markets you're serving right now?
Yeah, great question. So there's three primary businesses within the MSH portfolio. So we have a full-time, what I would call hiring advisory business. So what I mean by that is we do a lot of traditional full-time recruitment type services. So recruitment process outsourcing, which is like when a company comes to you and says, we want to outsource all talent acquisition to you. We've done this with companies like Burger King, AutoNation, Condé Nast. So really big companies, right? Mm-hmm. We do executive search. But also what we realize is that because we've worked with thousands of companies over our 14 years in business, we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. So in addition to finding great talent for our clients, in addition to telling them what's going on in the market from a data perspective, we also realize that companies want to learn what other companies are doing that works and what doesn't work. And so that's a big part of what we offer as part of our service and what I think differentiates us in that space. So that's that business. Then we have a technology solutions business that's really around all things project-based, program-based. And so when you bring in somebody to your organization to solve a specific need, primarily in the technology side, that's when you would come to MSH Technology. And so we do everything from managed service consulting to offshore and nearshore. We have 2 offices in India. We have an office in Mexico City. And then obviously we support clients here in the US on a project basis, right? And everything from staff augmentation to full managed service and everything in between. And so, and then we have our software business, which is Aon, which is the shirt I'm wearing today.
That's what I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, well, I'll get into that in a little bit deeper detail in a minute, but that's really around, we wanted to be able to scale what we've learned and have our customers be able to interact with it through technology. And so that's why we built the software we did. So there's three, and that's pre-revenue, by the way, right now. And so those are the three businesses. And so we have offices in South Florida, New York City, Nashville, Dallas, Toronto. And then we have two big offices in India where we have over 150, 160 people. And then we have the office in Mexico City, like I mentioned. And so we're a company that has done full-time placements in over 43 countries. Wow. So we've placed people all around the world. We're a truly national organization, and I want to continue to expand our reach into the Midwest, the West Coast. Obviously, West Coast is where I'm from, so eventually I want to expand out there more fully. And so what I like to say is that we are a company with a global reach, but a local feel. And so it's very important that our customers don't look at us as this big conglomerate that just is doing things on a boilerplate cookie cutter type perspective. There's a very important human interaction component to what we do. And then at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. We're working in the people business. And so to automate everything, to be robotic or process driven around everything just doesn't make sense. And so what we want to do is be able to have that global reach, but really that local feel. And so it feels like, we're around the corner.
Yeah.
Now, in the case of Locality Bank, we actually are around the corner. But for some of our customers, they're not necessarily in the geographic locations we are, but we do everything we can to make it feel like they can tap us on the shoulder and we can be there shortly and give them that kind of local feel.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that's the same business model we're aspiring to, right? With our name, Locality Bank, and to be able to offer that same type of local flavor as we expand and grow. So hopefully we'll be able to do it as good as you have. So what about mentors? Have you had anybody who's been a significant mentor for you?
Yeah, definitely. So there's been ones that are, that you read about in books and that you learn about that way. But I've had some mentors in my life. So I had the mentor I mentioned at ADT. He actually ended up being one of the partners. And so he's somebody that I've known for a good part of my life, and has always been, from everything from, what colleges to apply to how to, advance myself in the corporate world. I got to say, because I got to work with him at ADT, it did wonders for me in terms of understanding corporate America, right? I only had 4 or 5 years in corporate America. And then I've had the blessing to work with a bunch of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies since then and learned a lot. But being in there day to day, I think has been so intrinsic to my and our success because of that empathy I had. And so I learned so many different things from him where he really took me under his wing and, would bring me in on meetings that I probably shouldn't have been in on and would give me advice on things that, were way above my pay grade at the time. It really helped me. Like some of the things he taught me were, learn about the people around you and what they're motivated by, and then speak to your audience. It's not necessarily what you know, but do you know the person that does know it? And can you go access that? How to stand out, right? A lot of times in any big company, politics plays a big part in your success at a company, unfortunately or fortunately. And so being able to learn how to navigate that at a big company was really imperative for me so that I could advise people in my future career around executives and things like that, and know what that environment was like and what comes with it. Because if you're talking from a point of ignorance, then people aren't going to listen to you. You got to have credibility in that space. And so I was very, very fortunate to get a doctorate in corporate America in my short time there because I was getting to spend time with the C-suite, right? The directors and VPs in the company. I was really learning and hearing about and understanding things that somebody at 24, 25 typically wasn't getting that exposure. So I was very, very lucky there. And I think that's funny because, there's a book called Outliers, right? Where they talk about how Bill Gates, one of the reasons for his success is that one of the first computer setups was at the University of Washington. And his mom, I believe, had access to the computer room. And so he used to go in there and play on those computers at a very formative age. And then he opens up Microsoft later on. That's not a coincidence, right? And so a lot of times, I'm not going to say that there's a lot of differences between myself and Bill Gates, obviously. But the fact that I had that experience at such a young age, I think was allowed me to see things at a different level that has really helped me. So I'm very grateful for my mentor at ADT and former partner. At that time, I've had other ones throughout my career. I'm part of a group called YPO, like we talked about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so, I've met so many people throughout that who have been there, done that, and been where I want to go, that have been amazing at opening the door and saying, here's what I learned, here's what I've seen. So I'm fortunate to say I have a lot of people that I consider mentors or role models or just even advisory, right, in my life. I'm somebody that is constantly hungering to learn more and realize that, what I know versus what I don't know is exponentially larger. And so I want to make sure that either A, I'm building a team around me that can help me solve those gaps in my knowledge, or I'm extending my network to people that have knowledge that I don't, and hopefully taking in what they've learned and applying that to my business and my life. So what were some early challenges that you faced in starting? Because everybody who gets into business for themselves, and particularly entrepreneurs, you're going to have, businesses up and down, right? We all go through great times and tough times. Tell us about some of the challenges that you had early on. Listen, I'm going through challenges right now. Listen, running your own business, being a founder and CEO of your own business, you are asking for a life of just getting punched in the gut and punched in the mouth over and over again. And you have to be able to get back up and eventually swing back. So some of the challenges early on in the business were working out the dynamics of the partners, right? You have an equal partnership with two other people. That's 33, 33, 33. What you learn very quickly is that without a hierarchy and understanding of like, how do we get decisions made? You're going to be in a constant struggle that will paralyze your business. So that was something that we had to learn early on. Getting the business off the floor was really, really key. I remember our first placement we made was with a digital marketing company. And we ended up working out a fee agreement with them, but also, can you put up our website and create a logo for us, right? So our first placement as a digital marketing manager for this company led to us getting a fee, a smaller fee, but also getting our new website and getting our logo. And so that was really like, we just fell into that. We got really lucky there, but that was really cool thing in that we wouldn't have had the money to do that for a while had we not done that. So that was, it's really, really, I wouldn't say that was something that was by design, but that was something that we had to figure out as we went forward. Making your first hire and getting people to believe into your vision and the type of people that are willing to do that. That's a really big issue, right? And then hiring employee number 2 and employee number 3. Now I'm proud to say that employee number 1, employee number 2, and employee number 3 still work for the company. Wow. So we must have done something right there. And they've done something right, obviously. But that's always a challenge. And then I think the biggest thing about it is like, we really didn't pay ourselves the first couple of years. And I had a young family at the time. I had just, gotten married. We had just gotten a house. I had just had a child and opened the company all in a calendar year. Wow. So that probably wasn't very smart, but it's how it ended up working out. And so, dealing with home life, but not making any money and kind of keeping my wife on the same page of like, this is why we're doing this. And she was investing in me at the end of the day and hoping that it paid off. And fortunately over time it has, but at the time, like, you really never know if that's going to be the case. You might have great ideas. You might have great processes. You might even have the first couple initial customers, but especially at the beginning, there's always that feeling of like, this could all fall off a cliff immediately. And what do I do if that happens? And so, we struggled through a lot of the same things that many entrepreneurs at the beginning did. I think probably that, getting through that point of finally being able to, pay ourselves and start to see the light at the end of the tunnel of like, hey, this is something we can actually do, was really key. I think there's some sort of statistic around most companies go out of business like 90% after the first 2 years. And so once we got past that 2-year gap and we started to pay ourselves and started to move forward, that was a nice big milestone. But leading up into that point, man, I had to eat like ramen for lunch and 99-cent cheeseburgers for dinner, and wasn't being very healthy, and I wasn't taking care of myself at the time. So I look back at pictures of myself back then, and I'm like, gosh, you're so into CrossFit. At the time, like I was the opposite of that. Like I was just eating poorly. I think I was smoking cigarettes at the time because I was so stressed out, working my butt off, and my health was like not good for somebody that was much younger than I am now. And so that was another challenge, is being able to kind of balance like my own personal health, my family and relationships, and this work life, and learning how to do that. It's different than when you have a 9-to-5 job. It just is. And so I had to learn. That was one of my biggest challenges. And fortunately, over time, I was able to kind of satisfy all those requirements, I think. So it's hard. And that's the message. And thank you for putting it out there, because I think everybody needs to hear that. If you're thinking about starting a business, becoming an entrepreneur,
you need to be, and I think you hit it on the head too. I think it's more missionary than mercenary, right? Because mercenaries have to get paid. And a lot of times, just as you're saying, if you don't have that drive and that you really want to do this and you really believe in it, you're not going to last a lot of times because you're not getting paid. And if you're a mercenary, that's not going to do it for you. So congratulations on making it through that period of time, because that's very tough. And a lot of people don't. Like you said, a lot of businesses, a couple, 2-3 years, they're done.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make, because I think, and this is not necessarily the case for second or third time entrepreneurs. You hear about serial entrepreneurs, but certainly the first time you're doing it, when you're first stepping into running your own business, I believe that if you're solely doing it for the financial upside, there's zero chance that you can be successful. There has to be something more mission driven about what you're doing, because that is what'll get you through the times when no money is coming in the door, or when you're not profitable, or when it looks like you're about to, we had many situations come up that, it seemed like it could be the end of the company if we didn't handle it properly. And that belief that's based on something beyond like making money was really key to kind of do that. I think I heard from the NVIDIA CEO, who obviously is having great success.
He's doing great.
Number 3 or 4 in terms of market cap right now, in terms of business overall. But I think I heard him say in a podcast recently that, I had somebody ask me for my advice on becoming an entrepreneur, and his was, don't do it, which is amazing to hear from somebody who's had wild success, especially over the last 12 to 18 months. So then he explained why. And the reason is that this is not a life that is glamorous or cut out for everybody. And for every success story you hear, there's hundreds of ones that don't work out. And the funny thing is, like, everybody looks at the end result and it thinks like, oh, okay, well, it's an overnight success story. That's not true at all. In fact, all of them had to go through heartache and failure and issues to get to the point they're at. In fact, I know we'll talk about this in a minute, but I'm reading the Elon Musk book right now. And I just find it amazing. The guy's, the most successful entrepreneur ever in terms of wealth. And yet you read about how close things were to completely tipping over, and both companies, SpaceX and Tesla, going bankrupt, and all the things he had to do and all the personal heartache and things he had to go through to make these businesses last. It sounds crazy to say somebody that is the richest person in the world, if he had been money driven, it wouldn't have worked out. But that's absolutely true. Like, the fact that he was so mission driven on, and listen, Elon has his flaws too, but like anybody does. But the fact that he cared so much about creating an electric car economy, or getting us into space and being multiplanetary, that's what got him through, I think, the times where it seemed like it wasn't going to work out, and ultimately has led to the success. So I think it's a really great point you bring up. And I wouldn't tell people not to become an entrepreneur, but I would tell you, make sure you're really ready for it before you step into it, because it's something that'll redefine who you are and your life. And it'll be something that is filled with extreme difficulty before you get any taste of success.
And I think that's why people want to work for Elon, even though he's like one of the hardest boss probably in the world. Mm-hmm. They want to work for him because they believe in that mission too. It's like I heard as something that it's harder to get a job at Tesla than it is to get into Harvard.
I believe it.
And that there was like 3 million people that they have on their waiting list to work there. And yet he's such a hard driving person, but people want to sign up for that. It's like,
I think ultimately what it comes down to is, and he is very hard on people. I'm reading some of the different things he's done. Like, wow, that's tough. And there's a lot of people that burnt out because there's only so much you can take. At the same time, and I believe this for every company, people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. That is a primitive thought process, right? When we first started forming tribes, right? And there's something really to that. I don't know if you've read the book Sapiens, but like they talk about the fact that being part of a community is something that we're hardwired in our DNA to do. And so a company, if it's just about profits, if those are the only ends, I don't think that's sustainable to build a great culture and a great employee base. You have to be doing something that people think matters, and that you're going to be at the forefront of changing it and making it better. Like, I deeply believe that the hiring industry and hiring in general is broken, and it needs to be disrupted. It needs to be transformed. It needs to be better serving the people that are part of it. And I'm going to be the one, and my company is going to be the one to help drive that and do that. And I think that's why we have the tenure we have at our companies, because people see that as being a problem. A lot of the people that we've hired, we've said, have you had issues here? Have you been a candidate in a bad situation? Have you been a hiring manager that wasn't empowered? Doesn't that suck don't you want to fix this and make it better? We've been doing the same thing for 50 odd years in terms of the resume and the interview. And have we not gotten very much better at it? And doesn't that seem crazy? Shouldn't we be doing something to make this better? And that's our lane. That's something we care deeply about, but it's an area where we think we can make a big impact and be transformative. And so that's been kind of the MO of the company since 2011. And I hope that that's going to continue to be the driver for us as we go forward.
It's great. We feel the same way here at Locality about the banking industry. But this is not about us. It's about you. So let's shift a little bit. So how about your family? And, you said in the beginning, work-life balance didn't exist. You was like, honey, trust me, this is going to be good for both of us. You managed through it. And then how about today? How do you handle that work-life balance? And
yeah. So I partially got really lucky, and partially I'm really proud of the decision-making process I made in finding my wife. I would say that if I would have taken that same process to my partners, maybe things would be a little bit different. But listen, I look back with no regret. But I do think that my wife is, if not the number one reason, one of the biggest reasons for my entrepreneurial success. And what I mean by that is I ended up finding somebody that believed in me. So that's very important. But also wanted the same things I did, but had a different role to play in that. And so what I joke around with my wife about is that she's the CEO of Rashid Family Enterprises. And so she runs the business of our life, right? And we have 4 kids. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old. I have a 5-year-old with special needs.
That's a much tougher company to run than yours.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think it's funny because, you hear about people who get divorced, or if you have like a few husbands sitting around and they're diminishing what their wife brings to the table. I've never looked at it that way. I look at her job as harder than mine. I look at her job as more valuable than mine. And I can't do my job unless she's doing hers. Because if I came home every night and there was fires or these different issues, or like she wasn't managing things the way she was, then I'd have zero amount of ability to put in what I put into my company. She allows me to do that. And so for that, I'm so grateful for her. And she's amazing. And we've been married for 14 years now. So she's been really, really amazing. And then my kids are my everything. Like, I mean, my whole thing in my life, my goal is, I want my kids to be more successful personally and professionally than me. That's like my life mantra. And to me, there's 2 parts to that. One is, I've got to set the bar extremely high, both as a human being, as a person, but also as a professional, right? And then I've got to also give them the tools to empower them to be able to go above and beyond that. And so that's really what my life is about. So sometimes, listen, that takes me away from my kids, and they understand that. Everyone wants to spend more time with their children. Work is a big part of my identity. I think they see a lot of my work ethic and like the fact that I show up every day. I'm pretty consistent. I'm pretty disciplined. And I think that builds a lot in them. But the weekends are like my time where I completely decompress. And like, listen, if I have to answer an email or something, I'm always going to do that. I'm a slave for my customers at the end of the day. But the reality is that we make time for what's important. And so I make time for my children. I make time for my wife. It goes in ebbs and flows though. And I would say that's a very important thing. You can never be 100% of what you want to be in every aspect of your life at all times. So my take would be, if you find that you're giving a lot to your work over a 2-month, 3-month, 6-month period, you got to be self-aware and check in there and say, okay, I got to get back to my family. I got to do a 1-month vacation, or I got to, do this special daddy-daughter trip, or I got to make sure I make every sporting event I can be at, right? So at the end of the time, my life is really focused on 2 things, my work and my family. And then whatever I can fit in around sports and golf and stuff like that, I'll do a little bit of that, but I make those my 2 primary focuses. And it works out okay for me. Now, I can always be doing better. There's probably sometimes I want to be giving more to my work, and sometimes I want to be giving more to my family. But I would tell you is I'm conscious of it and I'm intentional about it. And if I'm going too far one way or another, I try and pull myself back and make sure I get back in line. So you probably have to ask my wife and kids if I'm doing a great job with that. But I think so far, so good.
I bet you they would give you a thumbs up. So anything else you want to add as advice to anybody who might be listening? You covered a lot of stuff. It's been great. So, all right, we're going to shift right into the lightning round now, where we just ask some quick questions. Favorite books?
Yeah, I just read, I'm reading the Elon book right now by Isaacson. It's really interesting. Isaacson is an incredible biographer, and he does, like, the fact that type of access he gets is really incredible. And listen, like I said, like, everybody has their issues, and Elon is no different, but that book has been really insightful in terms of, you see what he's willing to sacrifice to have the success he's had. And that's not for, I wouldn't even say everybody. It's not for most anybody. But he does it, and you can see why he's had the success he has. And God bless him for that, because I do think he's doing some things. I have a Tesla. I believe in what he talks about in terms of multiplanetary ability. And so I just see why he's as successful as he is. And he seems like he's tough to work with or work for or be around. But Isaacson does a great job of capturing that. I also read a book recently called How to See a Person by David Brooks. Really interesting. It's a little bit fuzzy wuzzy. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a really about empathy and about understanding humans. And one of the things the book talks about that really resonated with me is that experiences aren't what happened to you. Experiences are how you reacted and responded to what happened to you, which I think is a very profound difference. And this is why you'll see two people, have very similar experiences, and some will be a victim and some will use it for the reason to why they excelled. And so I just think that's a very important thing. And understanding that about people, and understanding how their experiences and how they responded to them play into who they are, I think is really important. And I just don't think that there's enough active listening and active empathy of people and their circumstances. You didn't grow up exactly the way I did, with the parents I did, with the family I did, with the friends I did. Why would I expect you to see the world exactly the way I do? And yes, for so many people, we see that being the issue. It's like, well, you don't see it the way I do, so you're wrong. And I think this book really did a good job for me in terms of helping me kind of reframe in my head some of that empathy. And I think it's something that a lot of people should read, because I think it's really good. There's another book I recently read called Range. And it's actually a book that is, I would say, the counterpoint to Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 Hours. And really what it talks about is how versatility actually is what leads to the greatest success. And the book starts out with kind of the analogy of how Tiger Woods was obsessive about golf, right? And so he became one of the world's greatest golfers. But then you look at Roger Federer, who's one of the greatest tennis players of all time. And he actually had a very different upbringing. He played multiple sports growing up. His parents were tennis coaches, but they didn't push him into tennis. And actually his success in a lot of ways is tied to his versatility. And so the book goes into a lot of different examples of how versatility for different entrepreneurs and musicians and actors played a key part in their success. And I think that's so interesting, because I'm a big believer in putting my kids in a lot of different sports, so that, once they find what they're passionate about, maybe becoming focused there makes a lot of sense. But a lot of times the choreography you learn in ballet can lead to you being a better soccer player, even if soccer is your passion, or being, a great writer. A lot of times can make you a better salesperson in some ways in terms of how you write emails. So I just think versatility and learning about a lot of different areas can a lot of times lead to really profound success. And the book Range talks about that.
Great. Good choices. Thank you. How about a song from do you have like a theme song that fires you up when you need motivation?
Oh, so corny, but I'm going to say Eye of the Tiger. Like, that's one that,
of course.
I'll listen to that when I'm working out. I'll listen to that when I'm getting amped up. I love a lot of hard rock. I'm a big classic rock guy. So a lot of great classic rock songs out there that I listen to. And I like rap too. So I remember I used to listen to, I remember before I took the LSATs, I was listening to Jay-Z's Black Album. And there's a lot of like self-confidence talk and talk about how, I'm the man or whatever, you know how rap goes, right? And so I remember listening to those before I went and took the test. I felt like really put me in a really confident state. But I'm not going to say Jay-Z's the reason why I did as well as I did on the test, but I think listening to that music really helped me. So I like to listen to big energy, big confidence boosting music like that. And so, yeah, that would be what stands out to me.
Good. Who, living or dead, if you could, would you have dinner with?
Oh, that's a great question. I was thinking about this the other day. It's funny that a lot of the people that we look back on and we deify died early, right? And it's almost as if people live long enough, we find reasons to tear them down. So if you look at like Jim Morrison or Kurt Cobain or Tupac Shakur, right? Kobe Bryant, right? A lot of like different people like passed earlier than they should have. And now their memories are almost lionized in great ways, even though in their actual, when they were coming up, they were starting to get picked apart at that time. So it's a really interesting question. So I'd probably want to go to somebody that passed. And I guess my answer would be, I am big on GE, General Electric. So I'd love to pick the brain of Jack Welch and a lot of the management principles. He hasn't passed on, he's alive. So that's somebody I'd love to learn from.
Yeah.
The aforementioned Elon, I'd love to, I think his mind's pretty amazing in terms of how innovative he is. So I'd love to learn from him. And then I got to be honest, I'm a big fan of all three of those people I just named. So Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, and Tupac, I thought were incredible artists. And I would love to pick their brain on how they came about their art, what their creative process was. So those are the answers that come to mind.
Cool. How about you talked a little bit about hobbies, but anything you're doing like health-wise, hobby-wise that's significant?
Yeah. So I'm a sports fanatic. I love sports. I love my teams. I like every single one of my teams. I watch all of their games, which can be quite a commitment because like the Phoenix Suns play in the West Coast time. So sometimes I'll be up to like 12:30 at night watching the game. So I'm really into, but I actually have not done as many sports like basketball or softball as I did probably 5-10 years ago. I do a lot of weightlifting. I love to lift weights. I'm one of these guys that likes to go into we talked about this, I think on my pod. I'm one of these guys that likes to go and lock in and me against the metal. So I really enjoy that. I got into running during the pandemic. And so over the past 2 or 3 months, I've been running probably 9 to 10 miles a week. And I find it to be kind of meditative and I can kind of disconnect. And so that's been really great for me. Meditation is something that I'd like to do even more consistently than I do, but it's something that when I do it, I always feel the value in it and feel good about that. So those are some things I do for and then reading. I love getting lost in a book. I don't read fiction. I read only nonfiction because I very much want to be able to take something and apply it right away. Not that there's there's a ton of value in fiction books, but for me, I love to be reading books and right away think about how does this apply to me? How can I apply this to my business, my life, my family, whatever it may be. And so I love to read. And that's another thing that'll be something that'll help me escape or take me away from the day-to-day. So those are 4 things that I integrate into my life quite
That's great. How about your favorite restaurant?
Oh, yeah, great question. So my favorite restaurant is, I love Chima down the road here, Brazilian barbecue. I just think they do such a great job with kind of the modern motif. And the drinks are great there and the food is great there. I'm going to try to think of some local spots here in South Florida. There used to be a place called Rebel House in Boca Raton, but that's not there anymore. So that can't be on my list. I went to a pizza place in Nashville recently called Dicey's. And that was some of the best pizza I've had in years. So that's really great. There's a place in Chicago called Frontera Grill. Rick Bayless, Skip Bayless's brother of all things. He's a famous chef. I love Mexican food. And that's probably my favorite Mexican food place. So those are some that come to mind.
That's awesome. And last question, how can people get in touch with you?
Best way is LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty prolific on posting on there. Sometimes to some people's chagrin. So you can definitely add me on LinkedIn under Oz Rashid, RASHIDOZ, just like it sounds. My email is oz@talentmsh. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm typically happy to reach out. Unless you're selling something, please don't do that then. And yeah, that's pretty
And how
much
about your
famous.
podcast?
Oh, that's right. That's a good thing for me to bring up. I have a podcast called Hire Learning, HIRE Learning. We've done 60 plus episodes. We have C-level, VP level, and founders come on and we ask them about all things talent, how they bring people into their organization, what are some of their best practices, but also like you do, we want to learn about them. We want to learn about what's important to them, about their journey and things like that. So I've had some amazing guests and I'm really proud of the show. And it's something that has become something I look forward to every week when we have guests because I'm naturally pretty curious and I want to learn about what other people are doing. And I also think there's not a great format for people who are, in corporate America or founding these businesses to learn about them and learn about what's important to them, right? There's only top 1% really get, profiles in GQ magazine or Forbes or whatever it may be. And so I'm trying to give a forum for people who aren't necessarily at that level, but also have interesting stories to tell and things that they want to talk about. And so that's what we do on the podcast. Again, it's HIRE, Hire Learning. And yeah, it's something I'm really proud of. And I'd love if people could take a listen to it and then tell us their feedback.
Great. Well, listen, you've been a great guest. Thank you for coming on. Always great to see you.
Appreciate it, Keith. Thanks
Continued
so much.
success.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to Localities Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.